Yes, Britons. Yes, the land of the tea, the crumpet, Union Jack, and, of course, nonsense. Yes, a very lovely land, nice countryside. But not everything is peachy in Britain. No, Britain is currently under attacks. Lots of nasty people is being let in by the ruling elite. It is calling enshittification of many Englander cities and towns and permanent demographic change. Oh no, this is very bad. Soon maybe we will have sectarian violence. But fear not, I have done researches. And maybe I have even found solution to this problem. But first, we must ask, how did this happen? Since World War II, the British government has been encouraging mass migration from the many ex-colonies of Britain. Except, of course, America, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. I wonder why. The politicians, of course, give many reasons for this. We hear that Britons do not want to perform dirty, hard jobs. We hear that there are not enough Britons drinking tea to keep the economy growing. We hear that it is our obligation to house people from barbarian lands because our ancestor supposedly he do many bad things, and also because pretty please want to save the poor brown people from themselves. But this is all mendacious lies. What is the real reason? I tell you now. It is to build a loyal political base, to destroy native Britain stake in their country, and to prevent native Britain from unifying for a glorious revolution. The final result will not be good, to turn Britain into a muddy favela of third world violence and refuse. Now, you might say this sounds crazy, it sounds conspiracy. Why would the political elite want to destroy their own country like this? There must be a more logical and rational answer. But this is not the first time that mass immigration has been used as a weapon against the citizens of a state. No, it has been used many, many times before. First starting in ancient Greece, 2,500 years ago. Gilon, the tyrant of Syracuse, around 480 BC. Syracuse is the old Greek name for Sicily. He migrated by force tens of thousands of people between Syracuse and other cities he controlled. He would also bring thousands of non-citizens into a city and grant them citizenship. These were not big cities compared to current standards, maybe 50,000 inhabitants at most, so moving thousands by force constituted a massive demographic shift. But why would he do this? Greek and Roman historians Herodotus, Diodorus, Plutarch, and Pindar describe these mass migrations for what they were, tools for removing and disenfranchising native citizens and replacing them with foreigners friendly to the regime. You see, my audience, mass migration has two key political aims. First, to provide guaranteed political power base, to guarantee votes and political support. Second, to break up societal cohesion of native demographics that are crucial for organizing political movements and revolts. People from barbaric lands don't care if the taxes keep rising or if they have to live 5 to a room. Compared to their homeland, it is a utopia. These foreigners, much delighted to be granted citizenship, work, and sustenance in a fortified town, were guaranteed supporters for the tyrant. You see, the archaic age in ancient Greece was a dangerous time to live in the Mediterranean. Today we have little idea of the danger and constant threat small settlements faced. If your city did not have walls and a formidable army, you faced attack from pirates, raiders, and slavers. To be exiled from a city was a virtual death sentence at the hands of bandits, pirates, or even other towns and villages. Citizenship in a Greek colony was a golden ticket, keeping you and your family safe from death, rape, slavery, and starvation. Today, the hordes entering these lands are not fleeing persecution or war, they are chasing money, free taxpayer money, in the free stuff utopia known as the UK. It will continue as long as the British people tolerate it, because the occupational elite do not pay for it. And yes, they do not pay for it at all. I give you two notable examples. Ex-Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, he pay only 23% tax on his 2023 earnings of £5 million. His wife also, she was non-domicile at the time, meaning she only paid tax on UK income. Despite living in the UK, she paid only £30,000 in taxes, which would have been £20 million if she was fully taxed on her income. The occupational elite, you see, they are global citizens. They are not the ones paying for these migrants. No, that is for you, the peasants. Just like they pay little tax, their children aren't the ones being shanked, living in exclusive neighborhoods in the lap of safety and luxury. I will also point out they do not hold large amounts of cash like the little people do. So when the money is printed, their assets go up in value. Meanwhile, your wages become useless monopoly money. But originally, the UK was very anti-immigration even in the wake of World War I, and the 1 million dead or maimed British men, they did not weaken immigration controls. No, they made them tighter. So, what happened? The rules in Britain changed in 1948. Not just a little, it was a major change, opening the floodgates. The British Nationality Act was passed in 1948, allowing all current and ex-colonial subjects to settle in the UK. In the wake of World War II, Britain lost 750,000 men maimed or killed. In contrast to World War I, there was massive damage in England from big bombing during Blitz and much rebuilding required. But how bad was the damage caused from the bombing? I want to ask, was it essential that they opened the floodgates like they did? Of all the Allied countries during World War II, Britain suffered the worst, it is true. Damages are estimated at £1.5 billion in 1946 currency compared to France's 600 million or so. That is many, many hundreds of billions, maybe even £1 trillion today. The 1939 pre-war budget for the British government was £1 billion. Today it is 1.2 trillion. For comparison, World War II cost about 25 times the annual pre-war government budget for Britain. This would be 25 to 30 trillion pounds if it happened today. But why am I giving you all these numbers? Why am I using government budgets to estimate these costs? Because inflation calculations are bullshit. Could Britain have been rebuilt without opening the floodgates to the global south? Absolutely, because France did not do this. France did not allow all ex-colonial peoples to settle in France. Yes, bombing damage was about half that of Britain, but it was possible, if slower, to rebuild without using foreign hordes. Okay, but just to drive this point home harder, let us look at Japan. The devastation of Japan's wooden cities from American firebombing, and of course the nukes, is about 2 to 3 times that of Britain. Tokyo in the 1940s was very much a tinderbox. Total costs to rebuild were at least twice that of Britain. Did Japan need foreign labor to rebuild? No. What about Germany? You can probably guess. Once again, the argument of labour shortage in the UK requiring the 1948 British Nationality Act was a farce. Britain lost all of its Asian and African colonies in the wake of World War II. This was largely inevitable, as Britain had been unable to defend its Asian colonies from Japan, which is meant to be part of the deal. When you are part of an empire, you get defended from the foreign hordes, the invaders. But why was it necessary for Britain to accept subjects from colonies that admittedly did not want anything to do with Britain? Well, the reason is simple, because mass migration wasn't good for the nation of Britain. Actually, it wasn't good for the ancient Greeks either, nor the Romans. It wasn't good for the people, it was good for their rulers. Britain's most profitable colonies were, in order of profits, India, Malaysia, West Africa, Sri Lanka, and Burma. But India was the jewel. India was by far the most profitable. 1947 rolled around and British India was no more. It only took 1 year from that for the 1948 Immigration Act to be passed. Do you think that is maybe a coincidence, or am I too much conspiracy theorizing? Once the profits from India stopped flowing, the elite of Britain turned their hungry gaze inward. They needed more cattle to fleece. The farm had to grow. Once a global empire, Britain had collapsed in on itself after involvement in not 1 but 2 disastrous wars. each costing between 25 and 30 years of annual pre-war spending. Absolutely disastrous. It was involvement in World War I and World War II that was the largest contributor to imperial downfall. The elite of Britain did not want to pay for this. It was paid through debt financed by British taxpayer over 60 years and through sacrifice of Britain men. The ruling elite of Britain kept their lands and wealth. The British taxpayer received only debt and death in return. And death they received in spades. Nearly 1 million British men maimed or killed World War I and some 750,000 again in World War II. It was the trade offer of the century. I keep my stuff, you get fucked. The last payment of the World War II debt came in 2006, 61 years after the war ended. I won't try to tell you there was no reason for Britain to involve in World War I. Spectre of German expansion in Europe was threat to Britain naval empire. But formidable British Navy, best in the world, high cost of amphibious invasion and low economic value of Britain by itself meant that Germany never considered an invasion of Britain. Britain joined World War I on a farce, treaty obligations irrelevant in the scheme of the crippling cost that resulted. There was considerably more reason to get involved in World War II than World War I, with Imperial Japan aggressively pursuing British dominion in Asia and the Pacific. Initially, negotiation with Nazi Germany was considered by Britain, but Churchill, ever the war hawk, after a few champagne and a debt bailout, riled up the peasants and convinced them that war would be a profitable venture. Churchill did not excel in World War I. As First Lord of the Admiralty, he was a key proponent of the Dardanelles naval campaign and the landing at Gallipoli. Absolute disaster, both major defeats for the British. Following that, he resigned and had political postings until 1929. Between 1929 and World War II, he had his so-called wilderness years with no political or military postings. The debts, they piled high, and with no income, he was increasingly desperate. But as Germany rearmed and World War II loomed, he found a new cause, and with it, a means to keep his mansion and luxurious lifestyle. In fact, I give little side note. When I was growing up in Oceania, my parents would force me to go to the Anzac Day Remembrance services 6 a.m. In the winter mornings, very cold, and we would stand there and give minute silence for all of these men who bravely gave their lives running into machine gun fire. Very sad story, lest we forget. Yes, we have already long forgotten the reasons for this war. If you ask the average layman why we were involved in World War I, he would not be able to tell you. Nobody knows. It was an absolute disaster. Historians swear up and down that Churchill was not influenced by bankers, but this is patently false. Churchill was raised in lavish aristocratic style, consequently also frequently in heavy debt. You see, his father had squandered all of the family's wealth. And the debt, it was heavy. It's 5 or 6 million pounds today. But he hated Nazi Germany and the financial elite of Britain like that. Beginning in 1933, Churchill was a fervent political campaigner against German rearmament and in particular against Adolf Hitler. Henry Strakosik, a Austrian banker, bailed out Churchill twice in 1938 and 1943. Churchill and Strakosik, they were not close friends by any means, acquaintances at best. Personally, I would be very happy if some acquaintances would give me millions of pounds today for nothing as a gift. Today we would consider such payments bribes towards a politician, a blatant ethical breach and a criminal act. I think it is only fair that the same logical standard should be applied to Churchill as well. Would he have been bailed out if he wasn't campaigning for another war? But, I digress. The people of Britain have been getting screwed for over a century. Their involvement in wars and acquiescence to hostile immigration policies is rapidly turning Britain from a once resplendent global dominion into an irrelevant backwater. For those of my audience that are British, my message is simple. Your elite are occupational, totalitarian, and filled with greed and lust. They embody, with few exceptions, the height of decadence, corruption, and incompetence. Politicians will only sink as low as the people tolerate, and the people of Britain have been far too tolerant. Recently, I saw an interview of a very old World War II veteran on a British morning show lamenting the state of Britain. He said, "I do not know what my comrades died for. There are far less freedoms here than when we were fighting." And he began to sob. Next to him, a cooing blonde hag and her diversity monkey patronized him. This is what he fought for: the slums of Bangalore and Dhaka, everything his sworn enemy warned him of. I hope in this video you have learned a little about British immigration history and the reason for the immigration today. Thank you for listening, and good night.